You're sitting across from her. She's laughing at something you said, the candlelight catching the side of her face. Everything feels right, but you're staring at her mouth, waiting for a verbal green light that is almost certainly never going to arrive. Here's the uncomfortable reality. Women rarely hand out verbal invitations. We don't walk up and say, "I'm interested, your move." That's not how our wiring works. Instead, we broadcast our interest through a completely different channel, one that doesn't involve vocal cords at all. And if you're not tuned into that frequency, you're not just missing hints, you're missing the entire conversation. Let's put a number to it. A well-cited study in behavioral science suggests that over 90% of emotional communication between two people is entirely nonverbal. 90%. That means the most critical dialogue she's having with you right now isn't coming out of her mouth. It's happening in the way she moves her hands, touches her skin, or manipulates the objects around her. The tragedy is that many men are functionally illiterate in this dialect. They're reading a manual written in French and wondering why they can't understand Spanish. But here's the good news. Women aren't mysterious puzzles. We're actually fairly predictable when you know what to look for. We leak information constantly through our nervous energy, our posture, and our unconscious grooming habits. The problem has never been that we are impossible to read. The problem is that no one ever taught you the alphabet of this silent language. Today, we fix that. What you're about to learn isn't recycled dating advice from a pickup artist forum. This is grounded in behavioral psychology and evolutionary biology, pulling from researchers at leading academic institutions and the work of experts in human ethology. Forget the generic tips. We are going deep into the neurological tells that reveal exactly what is going on inside her head, often before she even knows it herself. And the fair warning before we begin. The final signal on this list is the one that destroys most men. Why? Because it looks exactly like disinterest. In fact, if you've been out with a woman and thought she was bored or zoning out, there's a high chance you are witnessing this sign and completely misreading it. Stay with me until the end. That single insight might reframe every past interaction you've ever had. Let's start at the top, specifically her hair. You've heard this one before, right? If she plays with her hair, she likes you. But here's where the nuance separates the amateurs from the observant. There is a universe of difference between a woman brushing a strand out of her face because the wind is blowing and the woman who is repeatedly twisting, curling, or flipping her hair while maintaining eye contact with you. Leading researchers in nonverbal communication have pointed out that this repetitive stroking is an ancient mammalian courtship display. It isn't a conscious choice, it's a neurological side effect. When attraction spikes, dopamine and norepinephrine flood her system, creating a slight tremor of nervous energy in the extremities. Her hands need an outlet. Her hair is the closest, safest target. If she does it once, ignore it. If she does it 3 times in 60 seconds, pay attention. Now, let her hands drift slightly lower. If she starts lightly tracing her collarbone or gently touching the side of her neck, you've just stepped into a much more intimate zone. The neck is vulnerable. Evolutionarily, it's where our vital arteries are most exposed. When a woman touches this area in front of you, she is signaling trust and a sense of safety. It's a subconscious submission signal, a way of saying, I don't perceive you as a threat, I perceive you as a potential partner. Behavioral investigators have noted that this specific touch increases significantly, by hundreds of percentage points, when women are in the presence of men they find attractive versus men they don't. If you see her fingers drift to that delicate area below her jaw, her body is telling a truth her mouth might never utter. Then there is the lip. If she brushes her finger across her mouth, bites her lower lip, or slowly applies gloss while holding your gaze, she is engaging in a behavior that is almost theatrical in its clarity. Eye tracking studies have shown that men's gazes naturally fixate on the lips, especially when they are emphasized with color. We know this instinctively. It's the entire reason lipstick exists. So when she draws your attention there, she is essentially pointing a spotlight at the most sensual feature on her face and saying, look here. It's a primal, effective, and incredibly direct biological cue. But let's move to the objects around her, because this is where the signals get incredibly sneaky. Is she fidgeting with her necklace, twirling her ring, tugging on her earring? Psychologists refer to this as displacement behavior. It happens when internal emotional arousal, whether excitement or anxiety, becomes too high to contain internally, so it spills out into physical action. The jewelry becomes a release valve for the emotional pressure you are creating in her. And here's the added layer. If that necklace rests just above her chest, her hands are acting as a subtle arrow directing your gaze exactly where her subconscious wants it to go. It's a nonverbal arrow you'd be foolish to ignore. Now we transition from self-touching to the direct line of fire, intentional contact. If she reaches across the table to graze your forearm, shoulder, or hand, she's breaking a massive social boundary. Touch is a high-stakes move for a woman because it signals clear intent and risks rejection. Research demonstrates that even a brief, fleeting touch increases the recipient's perception of warmth and trust toward the initiator. It's a brilliant psychological strategy on her part. By touching you, she isn't just expressing her interest, she is scientifically making you more likely to feel connected to her. It's a win-win. But here's the crucial part. If she touches you and you freeze like a statue, offering no smile, no lean-in, no reciprocation, you've just dropped the ball. She threw it to you and you let it hit the floor. The correct move is to acknowledge it. Mirror the gesture lightly or hold her gaze a moment longer. She just risked her pride to give you that signal. Respect it. Watch what she does with her drink. Is she slowly running her finger around the rim of her wine glass, tracing the stem of a water glass? According to body language specialists, this is a textbook surrogate gesture. The glass becomes a stand-in. She is channeling the physical energy she wants to direct at you into the object in her hands because social norms prevent her from acting on it directly. The glass is getting the attention she wishes she could give you. If she's doing this while maintaining eye contact, she is practically holding a neon sign. And finally, observe as she begins adjusting her clothing, straightening her top, smoothing her skirt, or tugging at her sleeve. This is evolutionary preening. Evolutionary psychologists note that animals preen themselves to appear more desirable to potential mates. She isn't being vain, she is subconsciously making sure the product, herself, is displayed in the best possible light for you, the consumer. Which brings us to the grand finale, the signal that breaks the code for most men. The facial frame. She rests her chin in her palm, cradles her cheek, or tilts her head into her hand while you speak. Most men look at this and think, she's bored, she's tired, she's trying to hold her head up. This is almost always the wrong read. In reality, she is framing her face for you. She is turning her face into a portrait, directing your eyes to her smile, her eyes, her expressions. Research on flirting behavior cataloged this as one of the most frequently observed signals of deep, genuine attraction. It is vulnerable. It is soft. It only shows up when a woman has dropped her guard. If you have ever looked across the table at a woman cradling her face, smiling softly as she listened to you, and thought she was zoning out, you weren't watching her drift away. You were watching her fall for you, and you missed it. So what do you do with this information? You don't turn into a surveillance camera. You don't stare at her hands like a hawk. You relax. You listen to her words, but you let your peripheral vision take notes. If you see a cluster of these behaviors, say hair twisting combined with a necklace fidget and a cheek cradle, you don't need a verbal confirmation. The bridge is already built. She is already halfway across it. Your job isn't to manipulate. Your job is to observe and respond. The next time you see these signals, recognize the invitation for what it is. Step forward. Meet her in the middle. Because once you learn to read this silent language, you'll realize the conversation has been going on the entire time. You just weren't listening with your eyes. Now that you know the secret vocabulary of her hands, there is an even more critical layer to this puzzle. What she actually expects you to do next. Knowing she is interested is half the equation. Knowing how to escalate without breaking the spell is the other half. I've put together a specific playbook on exactly how to respond to these green lights, what to say, how to move, and how to seal the connection without coming off as awkward. You can find that breakdown right here on Silent Power.